The Decrepit Orphanage. Jacob awoke, disoriented and groggy, to the sound of soft dripping nearby. As his eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light, he became aware of a damp, musty odor surrounding him. Looking around in bewilderment, he found himself lying on a filthy mattress in a small, decrepit room. Cracked tiles lined the water-stained walls and layers of grime coated every surface. The lone window was boarded up with rotting wood planks, explaining the sickly glow that fought through gaps and knotholes. An exposed pipe ran along the ceiling, dripping ominously onto the floor and puddling in one corner. Jacob's heart started pounding as he realized he didn't know where he was or how he had gotten there. The last thing he could recall was driving home late last night after meeting friends for drinks. Now, panic began creeping in as he went to stand up and felt a tug on his ankles. His legs were chained to the grimy metal frame of the disheveled mattress. In an instant, a cold rush of adrenaline gripped him. Jacob yanked furiously at the chains, desperation fueling his efforts as they rattled and strained against the frame's rusted bolts. But they refused to give way as fear rapidly clawed its way up from the pit of his stomach. Suddenly, a faint creaking noise made Jacob freeze, his eyes darting around the dimly lit cell. A sound like footsteps in the corridor beyond the room's solitary door. He held his breath as the reverberating tread grew louder and closer until it stopped right outside. Jacob's body went rigid as the handle began turning with a shrill rasp of metal on metal. The door let out an agonizing groan as it slowly swung inward with a deafening squeal of rusted hinges. A human silhouette emerged from the darkness, completely obscured except for the amber glow of a cigarette dangling from pursed lips. Tendrils of smoke coiled upwards as the figure took a long drag, illuminating the narrow beams of light slashing across its face in bars, hints of hollow cheeks, a sharp brow ridge, the chrome glint of an object gripped in one hand. "Who are you?" Jacob barely managed in a hoarse whisper, his mouth bone dry. "Where the hell am I?" The only response was a thick cloud of smoke exhaled with a low, raspy chuckle. Jacob strained to make out any other details as his captor entered. It was clearly a man based on his imposing height and build, wearing a filthy jumpsuit covered in smears of dirt and grease. He strode over to the wall and pressed a switch, buzzing an array of naked fluorescent bulbs to horrific flickering life. Jacob squeezed his eyes shut against the harsh glare, but it was too late. His pupils had already burned with the unmistakable sight of what appeared to be thick, dark bloodstains streaked in long drags across that wall and spattered over every surface, dried, caked, and turned almost black with age. His breath caught in his throat as the stench of copper and decay overnight overwhelmed his senses. He retched violently while his captor looked on, seeming to revel in Jacob's despair. "Wakey, wakey." The gravelly voice mocked with a wheezing laugh as Jacob strained for air. "Please." Jacob pleaded between ragged gasps, "I'll do anything, give you any money you want. Just let me go." His captor didn't respond, casually strolling over to a rusted metal table against the far wall. As he moved through the sickly rays of light, more of his weathered features emerged from the gloom. A face creased with deep lines and scars from years of hardship. Patchy stubble on a squared jaw. A tangle of lank graying hair hanging over his brow. And most unsettling, calm, pale blue eyes seemingly devoid of any human emotion. He set the chrome object down with a heavy clang, revealing it as a thick lead pipe, and began carefully arranging an array of wicked-looking implements on the table's cracked surface. A rusted metal lockbox filled with assorted keys, pliers, and sharp pricking tools. A battered leather strap, frayed at both ends. A dented aluminum pitcher, its exterior stained with foul-looking resin. A syringe filled with a murky blue liquid that sent a chill down Jacob's spine. A handheld camcorder, the kind with a bright video light and ancient battery brick. Jacob felt nauseous panic bubbling up inside, his mind racing to make sense of these nightmarish surroundings and what sadistic horrors potentially awaited him. That's when his captor finally made eye contact, the ghost of a smirk flashing across his ruined face. With slow, purposeful movements the man casually began rolling up the sleeves of his jumpsuit as he spoke, voice little more than a breathy rasp. "Let me guess. You was just mindlessly driving along one of them old country roads, listening to your indie garbage on the radio, not even paying attention to them there crumbling buildings in the side view mirror as you cruised right on past." He traced a filthy fingernail along the rusted edge of the aluminum pitcher, flaking off chunks of resin that fell to the floor. "Yep, most folks don't even notice this here place no more. Not after they shut it down all them years ago, the Lancaster County Orphan Home." He flashed a haunting grin at Jacob. "But even back then, they shoulda condemned this sick piece of history a hell of a lot sooner than they did." Jacob opened his mouth but only noises of confusion escaped amidst panicked breaths. "Oh yeah, I'm well aware of the stories," his captor continued with a slow nod. "The stuff that went on in these walls back in the day? Shameful. Just downright evil is what it was. Even made me queasy when I first learnt the sordid details." He slowly ran his tongue over cracked, dry lips. "But after a while, a man gets curious. You know that feelin' when you hear something awful and as much as it might make you turn away, there's still that itch that just keeps on scratchin' at the back of your brain? Tellin' you gotta see it for yourself with your own two eyes. Gotta see just how dark we're capable of getting." Jacob could only shake his head in silent terror, straining mindlessly against the chains holding him trapped on the decrepit mattress. His captor turned away, drifting over to the rusted table and retrieving the leather strap and lockbox, absent-mindedly twisting the strap into a tight coil as he spoke in that grating rasp. "So I dug, and I found out things even the history books couldn't stomach to record. The kinds of things that get all swept up and hidden." He clicked his tongue slowly. "Local cops, church elders, men of power, they all knew back then. But hey, who's gonna care about a few orphan brats from poor families?" Jacob stifled a scream as the man tossed the leather strap on the mattress next to him with a heavy thud, the coiled length knotted and stiff. Something in his eyes had gone vacant and distant, unfocused as he continued reciting hollow horrors, the kinds of twisted, depraved rituals that turned these walls black as coal and got the roaming dead to whispering. His gaze turned down, lingering intensely on Jacob as his jaw clenched for a moment. "Things that make me wonder, just what would possess a person to do something like that?" The pipes above Jacob let out an ominous groan as something shifted in the ancient plumbing. His captor darted his eyes upwards at the sound, smirking slightly. "Ah, you hear that? I think them sprits upstairs is gettin' restless. Can't hardly blame 'em though," he drawled, twisting his wrist as he inspected the thick lead pipe still lying on the table. Jacob's heart pounded like a jackhammer as the full reality of his dire situation crashed over him. This crazed man wasn't just looking to hurt him. He didn't just want money or something material. No, it was something much worse, some twisted act of depraved curiosity, in the name of bearing witness to humanity's potential for darkness. Hot tears welled up in Jacob's eyes as powerlessness took over his very core. In a desperate final attempt, he lurched against his shackles, screaming hoarsely,